They say winter is a time for peace and quiet, but when the snow starts falling and the world goes silent, you realize the quiet is exactly what you should be afraid of. Here are 3 true horrifying stories from the dead of winter. I've always been an introvert. That's why buying a remote cabin in the Cascades felt like a dream come true. No neighbors, no traffic, just endless pine trees and silence. It was perfect. Until the blizzard hit 3 nights ago. The forecast called for a few inches, but by 10 p.m., the wind was screaming against the wall so loud the whole cabin was shaking. It sounded like something was trying to tear the roof off. I double-checked the deadbolts, on the front and back, doors, force of habit, and went to sleep upstairs. I remember looking at the clock. It was 11:15 p.m. The world outside was just a blur of white chaos. I woke up suddenly. The wind had stopped completely. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating. I rolled over and looked at the digital clock. 3:33 a.m. I lay there for a minute, trying to figure out what woke me up. Was it a noise? A feeling? My throat was dry, so I decided to go downstairs for some water. As I walked down the wooden stairs, the floorboards creaked. I froze, listening. Nothing. Just the settling of the house. I walked into the living room and stopped. The storm had cleared, and the full moon was shining off the fresh snow, lighting up the living room with a ghostly blue glow. I walked over to the sliding glass door to check the depth of the snow. My heart stopped. About 20 feet from my deck, coming out of the dense, black tree line, were footprints, fresh, deep holes in the undisturbed snow. I squinted, leaning closer to the glass. They weren't boot prints. They looked bare. Long, narrow, barefoot human prints. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was an animal, a bear, but bears don't walk on 2 legs with arched feet. I watched the trail. The footsteps walked in a weird, jagged line, staggering towards the house. And they came right up to the glass door I was standing behind. I held my breath, waiting to see the tracks leading away. Maybe they checked the door and left? I scanned the snow to the left, smooth. I scanned to the right, smooth. There were no tracks leaving. A cold shiver went down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. The footprints walked up to the door and stopped. That meant whoever made them was standing right there, against the wall, just out of my line of sight. I frantically flipped the switch for the porch light. The deck was empty. I let out a shaky breath. But then I saw it. On the glass, right at eye level, was a smudge. I stepped back. It was a greasy, foggy imprint of a forehead and 2 hands pressed against the glass. From the inside. They weren't outside waiting to get in. They had been inside, watching me sleep. And then they walked out into the snow. It was stupid of me to take the shortcut. My GPS said Route 9 would save me 20 minutes, but it failed to mention that Route 9 hadn't been plowed in days. I was driving my old sedan, creeping along at 20 miles per hour as the snow fell thicker and thicker. It was hypnotic, millions of white flakes rushing at the windshield. Then the worst possible thing happened. My headlights flickered and the engine just died. No sputtering, no warning, just sudden, absolute silence. I turned the key. Click, click, click. The battery was dead. I sat there for a moment in the dark, gripping the steering wheel. I checked my phone. No service, of course. I was miles from the nearest town, surrounded by dense forest on both sides. The temperature inside the car started dropping immediately. I could see my breath fogging up the air. I decided to lock the doors and try to sleep until morning. Maybe a plow truck would come by. I leaned my seat back and closed my eyes. Crunch. My eyes snapped open. It was faint but distinct, the sound of snow being crushed under a heavy boot. I sat up, wiping the condensation off the window. At first, I saw nothing but the wall of pine trees. Then I saw movement. About 50 feet away, standing just at the edge of the woods, was a figure, a man. He was wearing a gray hoodie, no coat, no gloves. He was just standing there, perfectly still, facing my car. I rolled down the window just a crack and yelled, "Hey! My car broke down! Do you have a phone?" He didn't answer. He didn't even flinch. He just stood there like a statue. Unnerved, I rolled the window up and locked the door again. I looked back. He was gone. I scanned the trees. Nothing. I told myself maybe he went to get help. I checked the time. 2 a.m. I must have dozed off for a few minutes, because the next thing I heard was a sharp tap, tap, tap. It was right next to my ear. I jolted awake and looked at the driver's side window. Nothing. Then I looked at the passenger window. My blood ran cold. He was right there, pressed against the glass. His skin was pale, almost blue from the cold. His eyes were wide, unblinking, staring right into mine. But the worst part was his mouth. He was smiling, not a friendly smile. It was wide, unnatural, stretching his face in a way that looked painful. He wasn't trying to break in. He wasn't asking for help. He was just observing me. Like I was a fish in a bowl. I scrambled back into my seat, honking the horn, screaming at him to go away. He didn't move. He just kept smiling, his breath fogging up the glass from the outside. And then he leaned in closer and whispered something. I could hear muffled through the window. "You're letting the heat out." This happened when I was 12 years old. We had just moved to a new house in Minnesota, and that winter, we got a historic amount of snow. Being a kid, I loved it. I spent the entire afternoon in the backyard building tunnels and forts. My backyard was huge, and it backed up to an old wire fence. Beyond that was just miles of open field. As the sun started to set, casting those long, creepy purple shadows across the snow, I decided to head inside. I was packing up my plastic shovel when I noticed something near the back fence. About 50 yards away. It was a snowman. It was huge, at least 6 feet tall. It had a lumpy body, stick arms, and 2 jagged rocks for eyes. The weird thing was, I hadn't built it. And I was the only one back there all day. I figured maybe my dad had snuck out while I was in the tunnels and built it to surprise me. I went inside, had dinner, and forgot about it. Around 8 p.m., I was in the kitchen getting a glass of water. The backyard floodlight was off, so it was pitch black outside. I pressed my face against the window to look out. My stomach dropped. The snowman was closer. It wasn't by the fence anymore. It was standing right in the middle of the yard, maybe 20 feet from the porch. I ran to the living room. "Dad, did you move the snowman?" He looked up from his paper. "What snowman?" "I haven't been outside since morning, kiddo." My heart started racing. I dragged my mom to the window. "Look! It moved!" She turned on the floodlight. The yard lit up. It was empty. Just smooth white snow. "See?" She laughed. "It's just shadows." "Go to bed." They thought I was crazy. I went up to my room, but I couldn't sleep. My bedroom window looked down into the backyard. I sat there, staring into the dark, waiting. Around midnight, the clouds moved, and the moonlight hit the yard. I gasped. The snowman was there. But it wasn't in the middle of the yard anymore. It was standing directly underneath my window. And it wasn't facing the house. It was looking up. The 2 black rock eyes were pointed straight at my bedroom window. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was that from this angle, looking down, I could see that it wasn't made of snow. The wind blew a section of the snow away, revealing something dark underneath. It was a person. A person in a bulky white ghillie suit, standing perfectly still, staring up at me, waiting for me to turn off the light.